Hey everybody, how's it going? Thanks for joining us tonight. I've got a few good guests on the stream with me to hear. The return, of course, Charlemagne and his first appearance on this channel, The Prudentialist. Thanks for coming on, guys.
Thanks for the invite.
Happy to be here.
And of course, if you are not for some reason subscribed to Charlemagne by now, you should certainly fix that. I've got his channel in the description. I've also got The Prudentialist down there, both his Twitter and his channel. So make sure to check out both of those if you do not have those subscriptions. So I wanted to talk tonight. Obviously, had the big verdict yesterday in the George Floyd case. It went a way that I didn't fully expect. I thought he would be found guilty on some of the counts. I didn't think he'd be found guilty on all of the counts. I'll go around and ask everybody's opinion on that in a second. But I would say that I'm obviously police are going to be in a bind here, and I don't weep too much for some of them because I think from what we've seen in the last year or so, many of them are very willing to enforce unjust laws and not stand up for their communities. But anytime you see someone like Chauvin get railroaded the way he did, it's still a bad sign for the justice system and what's coming kind of down the pipe. We've also seen some other flare-ups with another shooting in Ohio that we'll kind of talk about, and kind of what in general this ruling means kind of for people in the country and the justice system moving forward. But Prudentialist, why don't you go ahead and give us your reaction real quick to kind of the verdict, what you expected, and kind of what you saw afterwards.
So, needless to say, I wasn't surprised. I mean, after a year of the police more or less being hand and knee on racial grievances, I figured that the jury, after such a quick deliberation, that it was going to be a vote to convict. I was surprised on all three charges, in part just because the wording of them, how someone can be found guilty of both intentional and unintentional killing. With a background in law, I found that interesting. Also, the fact that exculpatory evidence, none of that stuff matters anymore. To me, I found that this wasn't surprising, despite the fact that you can have, all the evidence in the world to clear your name of any criminal wrongdoing. And it doesn't matter because the media, the press, and the mob will threaten violence. And as I tweeted earlier, he who is the sovereign is the one who can threaten to say fuck you with the mob.
Yeah, I thought it was really confusing too with the second and third degree murder, because I mean I'm not familiar with their definition, but in the state where I am, those are opposing rulings. Like those are imposing charges. So how you could be guilty of both was very confusing. But Charlemagne, what did you think? What did you expect, and how did you think that all played out?
I didn't pay too close attention to it because I think ultimately it doesn't matter which way it goes. But I was a bit surprised that he was found guilty on all accounts. Maybe I should not be surprised at this point, but it seemed to me in the last couple of weeks, maybe only days, it's hard to keep track these days, there's been evidence coming out just sort of showing how absurd the entire case is. And then he still gets found guilty on all counts. It was kind of bizarre. I expected some mix between the two. I didn't expect him to get off completely. They had to charge him with something, but I did not expect, like you, for him to be found guilty on all of the counts. So that was a bit of a surprise. But I think the verdict is ultimately irrelevant, as we're seeing, because he either gets found super guilty, as they did, and now they're going to riot to celebrate, or they're going to say things like, this is just the beginning, and now we're going to riot for even more, Black Lives Matter rights and everything. Or the other case, he's not found guilty. He's found not guilty on all counts, right? And then they riot because racism, right? So either way, I think the same result was going to happen. So it's almost irrelevant what the trial's specific outcome was. It is. We can't say it's good that the justice system, to me, obviously failed in this way, but I think it's also inevitable that it does. So all we're seeing is now we're getting another data point. It's just saying, okay, well, now we know we're here in the collapse of justice, right? So
Yeah, I think I think its most valuable thing is kind of as a weather vane or as a marker of kind of where we are in the process. And yeah, I didn't expect justice in that either. Like you, I didn't follow every aspect of the case. I wasn't glued to the TV or watching all the testimony, that kind of thing. But just from what I had seen and what was coming out, it seemed absolutely absurd that they would get everything on him. And I think, the media was as surprised as anyone. They seemed more disappointed than anybody that he seemed to have been found guilty on everything. And so they immediately kind of retreated to this narrative of this is retribution, but it's not justice, or no, it's this is accountability, but it's not justice. That was the retreat. So there's no, like I said, there's no break in the narrative. There's no change. There's no, oh, well, glad to see that this was done. It was just immediately moving on to, oh, well, good, he's guilty, but this doesn't change anything. It's still a problem. Everything is still going on. Everything still has to be dismantled. Everything is still systemically racist.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. It shows you how perverse the whole system is, where the least just outcome, from my perspective, is the thing that appears to have upset our enemies the most. It's this weird inversion, because I think it is, in a sense, the worst outcome for the media, because now their job is a little bit harder in ensuring that the correct riots happen at the correct times in the correct places. But these were going to happen anyway, so it might either way. I don't think there's anything we stand to gain from it, because the future is essentially writ at this point, and the sequence of events will play out this or that way, but the destination is going to be the same.
Yeah, and I think this again vindicates some of the assertions that people have not liked from people like Moldbug, who have said that the enemy running out of fuel is sometimes the most valuable thing that can happen. Like the progressives losing opposition, losing a coherent narrative and enemy to fight against is kind of the most valuable thing, because you can see them kind of running out of steam and straining to make this. I mean, don't get me wrong, they'll still use this, but you can see it's not what they wanted. It's not the fire that they had hoped it would be, because the verdict came back the way it did.
Again, another perverse point is the media wanted him to get off so that justice would not be done for Black lives, right? So that they could promulgate their narrative in a more convenient way. It's just, no matter what angle you approach this from, it just should fill anyone with disgust.
Well, and you can also see the Fox News hosts were celebrating. Like, literally, I think it was Greg Gutfeld was saying, "Oh, I'm glad they found him guilty and everything, because they were going to burn down my house." Like, yeah. He's like, they looted my neighborhood last time, and they won't loot it this time. And I'm glad an innocent man is going to jail, because that's what it takes to keep the mob from destroying my neighborhood.
Yeah, that's not exactly the most ethical reason to want an innocent man to be convicted of second-degree murder. But, that's a clown world for you.
Yeah, more honest than we expect. Prudentialist, what do you think of kind of the media narrative and how they ended up spinning this after the guilty conviction?
Well, I mean, I think ever since the media's managed to make sort of the systemic, racism claims, their sort of bread and butter from when they talk about police shooting or Black lives. To me, it wouldn't matter what the narrative or what the verdict was, because they're still able to push that. That's why they were so easy to have their moment of surprise, like, oh, the jury found him guilty, which I'm surprised that they said that after you had so many like newspapers and, pundits trying to dox the jury. So of course those people were scared to death. But on top of that, they're already transitioning from the, this is one instance, it's not justice, it's just accountability. And, him getting his death, or his conviction is just proof that George Floyd is this messianic figure that they want to pursue in the media. You had Nancy Pelosi say something along the lines like, "Thank God for George Floyd for sacrificing himself so we can get justice." I'm not surprised at all of what's going on. The narrative may be incoherent, but I think, as people like Nick Landell point out, the left loves contradiction.
Yeah, and I wanted to talk a little more about the obvious intimidation of the jurors. So, I mean, obviously, this is not brand new. but I feel like this was more intense than it has been in past years, where it was very clear that the media was all but directly naming the jurors. They were ready to name the ones that had, I think, been removed as alternate jurors, and they had profiles in every juror, and that it was very clear that if a verdict that was not in line with the media's desire was released, they would functionally be ordering hits on these jurists, and I don't think anyone who went into that deliberation had any illusions. It wasn't just about their cities getting burnt down, though that was certainly on the menu. It was about personal attacks on them. It would have been. It would have meant that their families were basically unsafe for the rest of their lives had they chosen differently. That attached to the direct calls to violence from people like Maxine Waters, and the direct interference of Joe Biden, talking about how he thought the verdict should come out. I think it's very clear that we're done even pretending that juries are supposed to in any way be objective and should not be influenced. I know that was never totally the case, but we're done with any illusions that that's how justice works now. The media will order a hit on your family via the crowd if you do not convict someone properly.
Yeah, they're so thirsty for revenge and to just spite people who go against their will. They basically set up the conditions such that it was impossible out of self-interest for any of the jurors to not find him guilty, right? They were coerced into finding him guilty, apparently, despite that not actually being the media's preferred outcome. I think this really shows their revealed preference, right? Even though they would have liked to have their cake and eat it too, and had him come out, not guilty, so they could spew out their, racism narratives more easily. What they really want is just to torment people that go against their will, or at least make sure that the threat of torment is so ever present that no one will ever dare buck the outcome they want. And that's really what happened here with the jurors. This kind of works in our favor a little bit. Their voraciousness in satiating this sort of a lust for revenge against these perceived enemies. I think we could actually use this because it makes them predictable in what sort of behavior they're going to engage in.
Yeah, you definitely get the feeling that they are not in control. You can see them overplaying their hand over and over again, and very sloppily so. And so that, like you said, that does make them predictable, and that can definitely be used to the advantage. Now, like I said, I'm surprised that there was some low scale rioting, but I was surprised there was not more celebratory rioting after that. I fully expected that no matter what the decision was going to be, that we would see that. Do you think that that's because they did not mobilize people on the ground the way that they would have in a guilty verdict, or do you think that really was, or an innocent verdict, or do you think that really was an organic function of the verdict?
Probably a little mix of both. I mean, I think the riots are pre-organized, very obviously. Probably they were counting on a little bit more organic support in the riots for a not guilty verdict. So I suspect they're just going to save them for later. Basically, they'll come up with some other. I've seen tons of videos lately being tweeted and whatnot, and stories about other police shootings that have happened this year. So they're just saving them up. Now was not the ideal moment to unleash the Black Lives Matter riots, but they will be unleashed, I suspect, probably in the summer again when the time is right.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Charlemagne. A lot of this, I think, the riots are clearly organized, and you have normie pundits saying, like, I can't believe how quickly these people are out and about. Like, this is clearly not, spontaneous, and we could have told you that a year and a half ago at the very least. But I think that we'll wait until the summertime when you have better optics, like when kids can get hurt because they're out of school. You'll see it, I think, mainly when depending really on how this thing in Ohio plays out, more so than anything.
Yeah, well, let's go ahead and pivot to that. Before we do, let me hit this super chat. The Doomgoy had this in before the beginning of the stream. Thanks for the great content. Love the channel. Thanks, man. We really appreciate it. Appreciate the donation there. But yeah, that's definitely something I wanted to transition to. Is we had the shooting in I believe it was Columbus, and for anybody who's isn't familiar, there was basically two girls fighting, and one pulled a knife and was trying to stab the other one. Police responded and ended up shooting the knife wielding female. Of course, I believe both were black, and so the immediate story was black teen shot by the police, and then halfway down the article, and a knife might have been found on the scene, when now we have very clear pictures of her like actively attempting to stab the person that she's in front of. But the really mind-blowing thing was not that the media tried to craft that narrative. I mean, that's exactly what you'd expect. That, oh, well, if we didn't get the riots we wanted with Floyd and that verdict, then let's just pivot to this new one. But the really amazing thing was how many blue checks on Twitter were out there pushing a narrative of, yeah, kids just knife fight. That's like just a thing that kids do. and like kids just got to be kids. So you just got to let kids stab each other, because like otherwise that's just a cop trying to murder a kid. Like, just let kids stab. Like, that's just a thing that kids do.
That logic is essentially boys will be boys, but for joggers.
That makes what I've seen on Twitter make a little more sense to me, because I only saw a couple hours ago this video of the shooting you mentioned, and I've also been seeing these memes about kids knife fighting, and I'm like, what is going on here? What are these memes about with kids having knife fights? So I didn't know this was happening. That is I don't know. That's just clown world for you. I didn't expect that to be. It's hard to imagine how any sane person could go in that direction, but I guess it doesn't really matter at this point whether or not they even present remotely believable narratives. I mean, it seems like they can just say whatever they want whenever a cop shoots a black person. You can just make up anything and it becomes true. That's the world now.
Yeah, it was absolutely wild, and like that was literally my tweet. Was like I did not expect the just let kids murder each other take today. Like, that was not what I saw coming out of this, but it's absolutely what they've been going to, and without even blinking, like you just saw them all bouncing it off each other. Like, yeah, this is just how neighborhoods work. And to be fair, like at some point, that's going to be the answer, right? Like, why would any police officer respond to a call that involves a criminal that might be a person of color at this point? Like, why would you even risk your career? Like, sit in your cruiser, eat your donuts. Like, whatever reprimand you get can't be worse than literally like being put on death row for trying to stop one person from murdering another one, right? Like that's going to have to eventually be the response. Cops are going to have to learn from this, that you simply just do not respond to these calls. That's already true in a lot of neighborhoods. If I used to report on crime, and I talk to cops all the time, they're like, yeah, we just don't go to that area. Like, we're just not responding to those calls. So there's nothing unheard about that, but it's really good. I think that's going to become the rule across multiple neighborhoods and multiple cities.
Yeah, I expect we see an expansion of anarcho-tyranny in this respect. I've seen some people predict the destruction of the police because of this and sort of celebrate it. You know, the cities are going to collapse and everything. And I don't really think that's going to happen. I think you're just going to see the same sort of managed anarcho-tyranny on a larger scale. But I don't really think the collapse of the police is really even a realistic concept. Like, it might be that the police can change form, but the state is never going to allow the police force as such to not be present. It might even be, you know, federalized or something, and maybe there are these extremely anarchic zones in cities, even more than there are now, but I really don't see how this follows, right? The state is simply not going to allow the concept of its monopoly on policing to disappear. It might tactically choose to not police certain areas, as you just described. But policing is not going to go away. It'll just become more political.
Well, they police the policeable, right?
Exactly.
That's gonna be the case. You're gonna police those that are actually gonna listen, are actually gonna be policeable, and I think in many ways this probably will be used to remake, if not completely federalize, police forces. You're gonna see a lot of once the police stop going to these areas, you're going to see crime skyrocket, especially in the demographics you'd expect, which is going to be described as systemic racism that those have skyrocketed. So then you have exactly the boogeyman you want, and then this is the excuse to start federalizing, right? When you see this wide scale spike in violent crime among certain demographics. That's going to give you the impetus to, if not completely federalize, crack down on all of those departments. It won't fix the issue, of course. They'll just shuffle numbers around, but I think that's probably where that's going to head.
I think it'll probably go towards a federalizing direction, but I think what you're also seeing is not just the state. The state won't give up its monopoly on the use of force or policing, but it's sharing that monopoly. We know that these people get bailed out and that they get, the proverbial slap on the wrist in more progressive cities. So what we're seeing, I guess, is an expansion of the state's policing power towards these highly organized, well-funded, and trained networks and cells of mobs and rioters. And what I think is also going to come along with sort of this federalization is you're going to get some sort of like community integration program. So essentially, we're going to let these professional rioters or Antifa or whoever get essentially, grant-based programs from the feds to police their own communities. And they're not going to do anything, but in the name of representation and accountability, we're going to let, these inner city groups police themselves, and things are only going to get worse.
I would be surprised if we saw, I suppose, a formalization, a deputization of these Antifa types. I
don't think it'll be formalized. I think it'll be sort of this informal, sort of like community engagement sort of deal.
Yeah, that would make sense. I mean, you could also see in that circumstance, I would see, state police officers embedded in the community as well as sort of like the political commissar that interacts with these, community groups to sort of form that link between the state and the local Antifa policing group. That'll probably be if things sort of go that way, I suspect that would be isolated to the places mostly where Antifa is actually active, right? But of course, where this is taking place, they're going to use the media apparatus to show the glory of being, monitored by anarcho-communist rioters, right?
Well, I mean, they also had. I think the commissar thing is bound to happen because that Christian GoFundMe alternative data leak led to some cops and firefighters getting fired simply for donating like $10 or $25 to Kyle Rittenhouse's defense fund. So it's happening.
Yeah, make no mistake, political purges are occurring, and the big part of this is even if you don't federalize these forces, you're going to radically remake their makeup. You're going to get rid of anybody who has any sympathy to right-wing causes. You're going to root out anything that happens to remain of good old boy networks, that kind of thing. And that's the major value of this, is making sure that everybody who is in the force is either woke or is willing to go along with woke policies to keep their job. This is it's the same thing they're doing in the military. They're doing this. They have the same problem with military as they do with the police, and it's that the people who are frontline most often are the people who are going to be the most sympathetic to right-wing causes. They need to change that, and this is their excuse to really rip down those forces and rebuild them in their image.
Yeah, I think the way you might see this actually work in the U.S. too, in terms of having political commissars working with these community groups, it would be like Moldbug describes the religion of exclusion, I think is how he put it. It wouldn't be that you would be forced to do something as per se. It would be that people would know you're not at the community organizing meeting or whatever, right? Like the people who are in charge of making sure the whatever space they're administering is on the ideological same page. They're going to know who's showing up to the community events or whatever, and wearing the mask and showing all the signs of being compliant, right? And if you're not there, then there might be some sanctions on you because of that. Just in a socially exclusionary way, kind of like we're seeing with the two classes of people building, the vaxxed and the not vaxxed.
Yeah, I think it's also going to be essential that they kind of start laying that groundwork, because you do have a few states, not many, but you do have guys like Ron DeSantis in Florida who've passed that anti-rioting legislation, which basically makes it legal to sneeze on somebody during a riot and have them put down. And so they're going to need to send a message to governors who are trying to guard against this, that there will be some kind of retribution for that. And so it's going to be essential for them to find ways to kind of force compliance down on states that are not currently in line with this level of thinking. As far as I know, DeSantis is the only one who has gotten this kind of legislation through. But if it's successful, I imagine you will see other governors who want to make a name for themselves try to jump on board with that, and they're going to need a way to make sure that they can still force that through and make sure their police forces are compliant and not breaking from the narrative. But that said, let's take a look here. I got a few super chats coming in. DC Perspective for $10. Thank you very much, sir. Says, regarding the them just saving them up, referring to the mobs, you're 100% correct. Tension is building, given what's happened in Columbus, Ohio, and Elizabethtown, North Carolina. All they are waiting for is one spark. Does anybody know what happened in North Carolina? I had heard of Columbus, but I didn't know of a separate event in North Carolina.
I'm seeing other pictures on Twitter. Maybe that's what this is, but it looks like there's like a woman in pink in a driveway attacking someone. Is that
I think that's the Columbus one. I think that's the Ohio one where
Okay.
she's trying to stab the other woman. But the point is that you'll have infinite examples of this, right? Like you've built a narrative where unfortunately the demographic that is most likely to be involved in violent crime cannot be policed for violent crime. And so there's going to be an infinite amount of if it's not this one that sticks, if it's not Columbus, Ohio, then it's North Carolina, or it's wherever the next one comes. And as you guys were both pointing out, when summer gets here, summer is always when crime spikes, right? Like that's just naturally how crime waves happen. They almost always happen in the summer. And so that's just going to drive up the number of instances and the likelihood that something that breaks through is going to hit the national airwaves and is going to be leveraged into more riots.
It's interesting how George Floyd's face is it's almost like the new Che Guevara. Like it's got to be one of the most recognizable faces in the country at this point, if you're clued into the news at all. It's a very bizarre thing. I suspect that he's going to be their saint for quite a while longer, and I think it'll be interesting to see the next event happen, right? Because this event is over, but there always has to be some sort of major racist event going on. So I think we're going to see almost immediately just some new narrative. It could be one of the ones we just talk about here, surface to keep this going until the time is right for the riots. I think the way the riots probably work mechanically, DC Perspective mentioned, the Antifa groups there, is they probably just use that as the core to get things going, right? And then people just come out like it's a big block party, basically. I mean, that's how you get all this looting and stuff, right? It's not like all of the looters are actually there protesting, for Black Lives Matter or whatever. There's just a cover for all of that other destruction to happen. And you can just draw out a crowd by developing a crowd, right? And so they have these professional crowds that just walk around and form the seed for other people to just come join in the big block party. And then, I mean, at this point, there are probably people who just wait for the looting opportunities to arise. Like they just surely there have to be some people in these communities at this point that realize there's almost a cycle of riot season where you can just go out and get your seasonal shoes and TV or whatever at this point.
Yeah, I was making that joke, like you're gonna have riot season the same way you have hurricane season.
Yeah.
Like you get homeowners insurance, and they're gonna need to do a riot mitigation on your property. Do you have the right window coverings? Are you able to repel invaders if necessary? It's gonna be predictable, like any kind of natural disaster.
Yeah, and as Charlemagne was saying, you're going to have some sort of event or kind of name. I think they've made George Floyd equivalent in the past of Trayvon Martin or Rodney King. I don't know if we'll get another big name like George anytime soon. However, they're going to find some way to keep the momentum going. And whether it's in Ohio or some other event, at this point, with how things are, it won't even need to be a shooting. It just needed to be some altercation on camera, like with what happened with that Army sergeant near Fort Hood. That's all it takes now.
They have such good propaganda with George Floyd. It's just interesting. There's something about that face, and they even have the quote, "I can't breathe." Right? It's almost like the perfect crime because with these other guys, you have like the bag of Skittles, but what can you do with a bag of Skittles? I think the specific circumstances of Floyd, the optics were just everything they needed.
And it's one they can't disprove, right? Like the hands up, don't shoot proved to be a lie. And even Obama's DOJ proved that one wrong. But this one, like he was high on fentanyl. He literally couldn't breathe. He had an enlarged heart. Of course, he's not being able to. Everything just lined up perfectly, like you said.
Well, and they just weren't going to let it. And you can see the religious nature of everything. I think, today they had the pictures circulating of like a church that was running a revival nearby, and people were like getting baptized outside of like the courthouse and the mobs and everything. I heard someone say like, "Oh, well, the congregation is doing it as anti-woke," but I read the article and it didn't sound that way from their quotes. They were talking a whole lot about the diversity of their team and the tragedy of everything and all that, but who knows? I mean, maybe that's the case, but you're definitely seeing a level of worship evolved, especially in the kind of language that people like Nancy Pelosi were using.
They literally had a sheet like tub at the site where he died, where he had he was in the hole from the police officer doing baptisms.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say at this point that George Floyd is now one of the most influential men in the country. I wonder if that influence is going to increase or decrease. Are they going to become even more religious around George Floyd, and he's going to be maintained the saint status, or are they going to sort of move on to something else? I suspect that they've built up this movement around him to the extent that where his influence is only just going to grow, as absurd as that sounds. I mean, he does feel like the new Che Guevara at this point. Like, instead of seeing Che on leftist t-shirts, you're going to see George Floyd forever for the next 20 years probably.
I think they're building a pantheon. Honestly, I think that's how it's going to work. You canonize someone and then you move on. They're always someone to reference. Trayvon Martin will always be an innocent kid who was just walking down the street, even though you could see the footage of God, what was the guy's name now? I don't
George
even remember.
Zimmerman.
Yes, thank you. George Zimmerman's like head bashed into the concrete and bleeding everywhere. But I think that's what they'll be assembling. It's easier to have everybody be a short, vague blip rather than canonizing somebody. I don't think they're looking for Martin Luther King. I think they're looking for a wide variety of these people that they can pull up quickly and name.
But they can. That's the thing. Like, think about just for a moment for the chat as well. Like, think about the last maybe 15 years of when we talk about like the sort of racial aspect of policing. Think of how quickly they've managed to make all these names more memorable. How many people can remember, Trayvon Martin, George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, and a dozen other names that have been involved in police race shootings, like Michael Brown, Freddie Gray, I'm thinking of these just off the top of my head, and it's not that easy to name 4, 5, 6, or 7 names. and they've got their pantheon, and they're marching for all these names. And even though George is the most influential, I think you're right. They've got a pantheon of just 20 different examples that they can name off the top of their head, all of them more or less justified. And as someone pointed out in the chat, there's the snack-sized saints.
Absolutely. So Narco Republican for $5 says moderates wanted guilty to cool down the riots, and the more radicals wanted not guilty so they could keep going. Some internal disagreement. Thanks for the donation, Narco. I don't think there is a lot of disagreement. I think that I don't think that they wanted the riots cooled down, to be honest. I think that it's, I guess you could say that because Biden is president, it's going to stick to him. But I mean, who are we kidding? Like the media are the ones who are going to decide who it sticks to. And it certainly wasn't going to be Biden. So I think I think a not guilty verdict was all upside for them. I think that what happened is really, and this is what's really important. This is why, like, the cathedral being a like a decentralized consensus apparatus is really important to understand. A lot of people will say things like, why wasn't the messaging on spot? It's like, well, because the whole point is it's not centralized. And so the mechanism to drive people towards this narrative is working, but in some ways it's working too well. And because it's decentralized, they don't really have the level of control to like pull back the attack dogs. And so some of them do go too far. The machine does continue in a way that gets them a verdict that they maybe didn't want at the end of the day, but because that's what they have to do, like that's the kind of the logical next step from the narrative they've been pushing, they can't really pull back the attack dogs, even if they're going to ruin maybe the best long-term outcome for them in this particular case.
Yeah, I mean that's something along the lines of what I was saying earlier, where that the jurors surely must have felt so personally threatened, even if they were never directly threatened, that there's no possible way there could have been any other outcome, even if they didn't want it. So I think it's not a problem of disagreement; it's just a problem of the mechanisms. And like I said, this can actually be useful in a way because it is outside of their control, right? This kind of gets into something that I was just talking to Don the Pleb with, and one of the problems with trying to interact with the political system, even when you're inside the house, right? You're on the progressive leftist side, you're part of the cathedral. Even then, you still can't control the outcomes because, in a large part, it's mostly just this process that's built up, as opposed to actual humans making decisions. It's more just like if you've ever seen that movie Brazil, I really think that's worth watching, because we really live in this tyranny of procedure and bureaucracy, and it's not so much one person or even a small group of people doing it. I think that's why Biden is such an interesting president, because it almost feels like he doesn't exist. It's like he's the perfect anarcho tyranny president, right? Because the federal government, in the formal sense, just seems kind of absent, like they're just phoning it in. But the anarcho-tyranny continues nonetheless through the bureaucratic framework.
Yeah, I reference Brazil pretty often to the Terry Gilliam movie. I'm always telling people, like, no, you need to see this movie. It explains your world very well right now, and nobody's seen it, so it's a crime.
The interesting thing about that movie is that, as far as I can realize, there's no central authority depicted ever in the movie. It's just like this set of bureaucracies going through the bureaucratic motions. There might be a book it's based on, I don't know, but as far as I know, there is no actual tyrant or dictator or anything like that, or at least they don't mention it. I think that's one of the most interesting things about that movie in its relation to our particular type of tyranny.
Yeah, there is no Big Brother. There is no Stalin. It's just the system moving forward.
Yeah,
which is really hard for people to understand. I know, like, I don't want to speak for you, but I hear you on other streams, and you're trying to explain this to people. It's like, no, it's a system, like, and everybody wants it to be like 3 bad guys with their names on like placards somewhere. It's like, no, like you're fighting a system, and you need to understand that for everything to make sense. And if you don't, then things get very confusing. But Keywitch, I apologize. I scrolled past your comment and it's disappeared from the super chats, but I do see it, so I'm going to read it, but I can't put it on screen. Kiewicz for $10 New Zealand says, it seems official now that revenge and justice are synonymous, and this is why AOC and Obama can come out and say justice wasn't served. Yeah, I mean, that they certainly. I think it's simply because they can't be served. They don't want it to be served, no matter what happens. No, I mean, they could fry, Chauvin live on television, and it wouldn't be enough. It wouldn't make up for the thing. So I think it's simply this particular religion does not allow for atonement. That's a feature. I don't know that anything could actually. Done to these people would actually ever be considered making up for it.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, a single black life to them is worth more than any number of white lives. So you can't just, even if, like you said, fried Chauvin, it wouldn't make up for it, right? You'd have to fry hundreds of people, and even then, it still wouldn't be justice, right? Because the black life of the black body of Saint Floyd is sacred. There's no way to atone for it.
Yeah, and this is one of the things Moldbug said, and I think the open letter somewhere in there, right, is like, how can you tell it's an aristocracy? Well, how can you tell you're in the aristocracy? Well, no one can. You can do no wrong to people, and anyone who does anything to you will pay for it fivefold, right? Like, it's when there's a clear weight of it's never your fault, and it's always the fault of the pleb that transgressed on you. Then you are the aristocracy, and that's very clearly the way that they are casting, African Americans in these situations. But let's see, Bolero 393 for $4.99. Thank you very much. Do we need to remake To Kill a Mockingbird to fit the facts and demographics of the time? How should NRX respond? I mean, you certainly, it would certainly be best, and I've said this a million times. Obviously, I love politics. I comment on politics. But if you can make culture, if you have that skill set, guys, if you're out there and you can write fiction, or you can make short films, or you can even, you can just make comics. I mean, think of what Stone Toss does with a couple panels, right? Like, if you can make content of that variety, it's actually way more valuable than what I do or many others do in this sphere. So if you can do that kind of thing, that would absolutely be great. But
and turn it into a business. Think like an entrepreneur.
Absolutely,
that's really where my mind is set right now. Is if you can create a business out of a cultural talent, create that corporation, and start building these things that we need. And don't just sort of do it absent-mindedly, for free. Don't do it for free. Build an economy.
Yeah, absolutely. Make it a market and make sure that you're the one, taking advantage of it. If you want to make that movie, go for it. Do not let the Daily Wire's shitty film production company do it, and make sure that you're the one going for it. And is for Auron's point, yeah, like we need more art. We need more, people writing about aesthetics and painting and poetry. And if you can make that and you can make it profitable, there people will come.
Yeah, and let me say this. I've been meaning to say this at some point. I thought about making a video, but a stream is a good time as any, because I don't think it was worth a full video. I see a lot of people say things like, hey, why isn't the distributist starting political campaigns? Or why don't you have Charlemagne out there, organizing this or that? Why isn't Auron out there, getting this kind of stuff done? And I get it. Like, people, we're out here talking about these things, and people want to see, rubber meet the road, and there's some fairness to that. That's why I like to see people like Academic Agent literally building his own university. Like that he is putting his money where his mouth is. He is actively taking those steps. But at the same time, guys, like I've got a family, I've got a career. Making content is time consuming. On top of that, we got to share that burden. And so not every political commentator in the sphere is also going to be a social organizer, is going to be a spiritual leader, is going to be an artist, is going to be an author. We need all types. And so I really encourage you, if you have any skills in any of these areas, plug in. Don't be a stranger. Get involved. We need everything. We don't just like, don't get me wrong, there's plenty of room for more YouTube channels. By all means, if you want to make a YouTube channel, do it. I'm not discouraging you in the slightest. But at the same time, it doesn't all have to be YouTube creators. If you have something else to add to the community, if you see a hole that needs to be filled, do it. Put the time in. We need the bodies. We need the help. You can't just expect people who are doing already, running channels and that kind of thing to also be the people who handle everything. And especially if you have those kind of artistic and cultural talents, please apply them. Like, those are extremely valuable.
Yes, although I do have a couple things I'm trying to work on, so maybe those will pan out. But I think when you say stuff like this, I mean, the network that we're in some part maintaining is of a high value in of itself, right? So to me, the question of how should I allocate my time usefully, it's like, well, even if I had some corporation I could make, just actually doing this and keeping this network alive is really important, because other people will make use of it to sell their product. So if your next guy here makes Trayvon Martin's Skittles the movie, he can plug into our network and market it. Academic Agent plugs into our network that we all mutually help maintain and market his thing, right? So the social network itself is a valuable entity, and maintaining it is really useful. So politically, we've seen a lot of new channels get created recently and grow a lot, like the Prudentialist, right? And it might seem like just having more voices isn't particularly useful, right? Because it's not like we gain more political power, but it's useful in the sense of making the network more stable so that other people can tap into it. Like, that's what you should be looking to do, is how can I tap into this network that we've all helped construct and sell product on it, basically. Because this bit started on the concept of making a movie or art and culture. Remember, all the great art that was created was funded by patrons. Someone had to pay for that stuff, right? So we actually need to be able to pay for stuff.
Yeah, and I think, like I said, like you were saying, I'm glad to see the Prudentialist growing. I like to bring guys like him and Last Things on. Last Things is doing really interesting stuff with movie criticism. There's many different ways you can go with this, and so if you guys make that kind of stuff, let us know. If you're getting that stuff going, let us know. I am happy to promote good work on my channel for sure, and I know many other people are as well. So if you get that kind of thing going, definitely let us know.
And the other thing to add too about more voices is that more voices you throw in sure doesn't add to political power, but it makes the network more anti-fragile, to take a term away. The more people that can remember how to get a hold of other people, how to connect them to the other channels and these services, the more likely that whatever knowledge and whatever we find is preserved and can be carried on.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, it also adds the redundancy of life happens. The distributist has a kid, right? He gets married and has a kid. He can't produce as much content. He can't be as active as he once was. You need other people to pick up the torch while he's out. People, things come up in people's lives. They change jobs. They have to disappear for a few months. You don't want your entire group to collapse because, key figures are gone. You want to have those people, and everybody has something different to add. Everybody has, perspectives coming in from their backgrounds and everything. So I like I said, I don't think there's anything near enough YouTube channels in this sphere, and I support anybody who wants to make them, and I'm more than happy to raise their profile. Like I just said, if you have other things besides YouTube or other type of content that's not directly political, that's super valuable too, and definitely do that and get involved, because that's huge. But we have BHW here. Auron, would you consider doing vids on scripture that bridge NRX? You'd be great at this for all the Lost Boys in this hood. So, as always, thank you for the donation. Christianity is certainly a big part of my life. It's something that's super important to me. And I think it's really important to the project going forward. I don't, other people have different views on this. but I don't think you really have a coherent movement that isn't supporting Christendom. And so I think it's really essential. That said, there are people who I think do this better. Lambda specifically has Bible studies on his YouTube channel. I haven't had time to join him, but I hope to be able to do that here in the future. I think Settler's Lament is somebody who is good at talking about those kind of things. I am planning to, I want to go back and talk about the abolition of man. I've been planning to read and talk about that a little bit, C.S. Lewis. But I probably won't be making directly spiritual Bible-based content, simply because I don't think that's my direct wheelhouse. And also I don't think it directly connects to like NRX. As I've said many times before, NRX is a set of tools of analysis. I don't think it's really Christian in nature. I think it specifically works really because it kind of pulls itself out of some of those concerns, but that's also where it has some problems. And so I don't know that those two contents really cross over directly. I think there are plenty of Christian people who are using the NRX skill set to look at things, and it's valuable, but I don't know if the crossover content exactly makes sense.
Yeah, I don't feel any necessity there either, to be honest.
Yeah, like I said, like
making that bridge.
Yeah, like I said, I think it is important to have. I think it's really good to have people making spiritually valuable content. Like I said, I think someone like Lambda is doing that, and you should definitely check that out.
Yeah, his stuff is good. His stuff's good.
Yeah, and it's good, and I'm glad he's plugged into many of these networks. But I don't know that we need. I don't know that every creator is going to necessarily like. You want to avoid becoming the Christian movie, right? Like where everything's an altar call, right? Like you want to be able to have, hey, this is important, and this is something you should like. God should be an important part of your life. But that I don't know if that needs to become the only thing that every channel is focused on.
And not everything needs to be connected in that way. I mean, I don't need to make like a neo-reactionary philosophy of grilling, right? Like if I just want to grill,
Right.
I'm just going to grill, and I don't need to figure out what Moldbug thinks about grilling.
Bolero 393 comes back in. Thank you again for the donation, man. Really appreciate it. Trayvon Martin's Skittles, a timely Netflix special brought to you by Mars Incorporated. Oh yeah, no, you're gonna see that content flow. Don't worry. We're definitely gonna see social justice summer on the streaming services.
Give it 5 months. There's going to be a Netflix original series on the trial of George Floyd or Derek Chauvin.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, I mean that's to some extent that content's already on its way. Or already here, but yeah, for sure. Let's see. Oh, sorry guys, there's a lot of super chats backing up here. 1 second, let me try to chase these down. I'm sorry if I missed a super chat here, guys. I had not kept up. I'm trying to hit everything though. I'm not sure how to say that. Feniel Dawit? I don't know, but $5. Thank you very much for the donation. Listen, I know there's a lot of left nairs out there, but I don't see how you can justify Floyd's killing. Didn't the coroner rule a homicide? So again, this is where I am not an expert. I have not followed the case closely in every situation. I will say this. From what I know, and I'm not unfamiliar with the legal system, I'll just say that I've reported on these things. I'm very familiar with attorneys. I've interviewed police officers and police chiefs and coroners before professionally. From what I saw, it's really hard to call that second degree murder. I can maybe see third degree murder, though it's still a stretch. I think manslaughter certainly was an easy charge to make stick. But I think second degree murder is ridiculous. I think the things you need for second degree murder were not present, and I think that his physical state means that it's hard to pin the ultimate homicide on the police officer, but that's just my take.
The question asks something different almost too. I mean, it asks about how you can justify his killing. I mean, I don't really think justifying the fact that he died really has anything to do with anything we're saying. I mean, we're not saying it's justified that he was killed. It just We're just talking about the verdict itself. I mean, whether or not Chauvin, as you just explained, ought to have been, strictly speaking, convicted of that particular charge is totally different, and whether or not it was justified that he died, right?
Yeah, yeah. Like I said, we started this off by specifically saying, like, we're neither, none of us had followed this blow for blow. We weren't like news junking this, and we were really talking about more of the ramifications than trying to parse the individual aspects of the evidence in the case. I think there's plenty of people doing that, and that wasn't really the point of the stream. So don't get me wrong, like, police do stupid things all the time. Like I said, I don't. My sympathies are, there are good cops out there. My sympathies are with them, but my sympathies are not in general with the police after watching what they've done this last year. They're more than willing to turn on their communities. They're more than willing to enforce tyranny. So my sympathies are not generally just automatically with the police at this point due to their behavior in general. If that's the impression you had, I don't think that was the case. But that said, the next one here, Red Hammerhead for $10. Thank you for the donation, sir. Yesterday, a partner at my firm said over a call I was on with the attorneys, go spend time celebrating your families with your families on this historic day for justice. Yeah, no, I'm sure that was happening. I'm absolutely sure that was the case.
That speaks to your point about how you're an aristocrat. Because, I mean, imagine if you had said, go spend time lamenting this historic day of injustice, right? So she can just say that totally comfortably, knowing no one will touch her, right? Which indicates that she's part of the aristocracy.
Oh yeah, absolutely. No, I think that's absolutely the case, and yeah, I think you're going to see a lot more of this where people are celebrating, declaring national days off for this kind of thing. I think you'll see a memorial of some kind next year with this kind of thing happening, and yeah, I think it's indicative of how these cases are going to be treated. Bolero 393, another very generous donation. Thank you very much. The distributors, Auron, A, Charlemagne, and others are doing a lot, just throwing ideas. Oh yeah, man. I'm sorry. Like I said, please don't take that as anything towards you. I wasn't saying that towards you at all. I was just saying that was a point I had been meaning to make in general. That's I had been seeing people say that on Twitter and in YouTube comments and stuff. Oh, NRX is talking about parallel institutions. Why haven't all the YouTube creators also like built entire parallel colleges and businesses and everything at the same time? I wasn't saying you specifically. I just seen other people especially in the debates. I mean, I'm sure people are familiar that they had that dust up with a little bit with Distributist and Don and it's all goodwill, guys. Like, don't try to outsource the drama. Like, everybody's cool. Like, but there was some disagreement. A lot of people were jumping in and saying like, oh, why aren't these people who are talking about parallel institutions also like having, why haven't they completely funded and built massive multinational networks and everything in their spare time? And that's more I was talking about. I certainly was not saying that you specifically had said anything about that at all. But let's see. Splinter here says, I may not have lived in ancient times, but I sure do feel like I am witnessing the rites and rituals of barbarians. And yeah, I mean, in a lot of ways you are, right? Like, barbarians are those outside the culture. That was the original meaning of the phrase for the Romans. And for those who are still kind of keeping the old culture alive, it certainly does look like you have barbarian religions and rituals springing up. These certainly do look quasi-pagan in nature to someone who is kind of keeping that tradition. But remember, honestly, for most people, this is the norm now. We're the barbarians to them, if anything, at this point. I think.
Yeah, this is the dominant culture, and this has been. I mean, there's always the debate of how far you want to go back, but I mean, to me, there's that post 2012 accelerant that has really transitioned. There, I think Conscious Caracol had a really great tweet a while back saying like, "Hey, when did Occupy Wall Street end?" Talking about all the memes and graphs about how like race and white privilege skyrocketed after like 2013. And that's where we're at. That's the dominant culture. Your John Q. Normie totally buys into all this.
No, absolutely, and those things are always interesting when you do the Google Analytics searches and you see like the way that certain phrases spike at exactly the exact time. So yeah, I think we have to remember that while for us it might be obvious what's happening, for a lot of people who are watching this might feel it's obvious. You need to remember that most people out there, that this is actually their dominant culture. This is what they see as the dominant culture now, and you are the outsider. And it's important to understand and assess properly where you are inside these things when you're having those discussions and when you're trying to understand what to expect next. I see Lev over there from Break the Rules. So I was just on Break the Rules last week, and I think the Prudentialist is going to be on next week, right, Prudentialist?
I will be on tomorrow afternoon.
Oh, tomorrow. Okay. So, yeah, if you haven't checked out Break the Rules, guys, go check them out. It's a really interesting debate show. They have a lot of people who are in our circles have been on there. So definitely go check them out.
Yeah, I've heard of this channel before. Does he have a video on Sonic? I'm totally watching that.
Yeah, I think at some point we had both been invited on there for like a size of government discussion, and I couldn't make that one. But I was finally able to make it on there last week. It was a lot of fun talking to them. Hoping to do that again.
Yeah, I'm on tomorrow.
Charlemagne, you were on the channel.
Oh, I was. Interesting. That's why it's familiar. I can't remember at this point. There's so many of us. It's a good thing that I can't remember.
Charlemagne simply is on everybody else's streams. He just
I remember now. There were a ton of people on that stream. I just got this random invite from Lev at some point, and there were like 12 other people on there or something, and I just sort of like dove in. That was pretty fun though.
All right, guys. Well, we're coming up on an hour. Did either of you guys want to talk about anything we didn't get to?
Let's see. I was thinking about Lev's extraordinary ability to moderate a conversation. I remember being impressed by that. So nice job to Lev there. There's an MDE. Did you read the MDE super chat?
What's an MDE? I'm unfamiliar.
$1 Million Extreme.
I don't know how that works.
That's Sam Hyde's show from Adult Swim that got canceled, right? That was like one of the first major cancellations that actually happened, was his show getting canceled from Adult Swim. Really sad.
Okay. That's
because, it was one of, it's excellent comedy, and Sam Hyde stuff is still great. I recommend his is it the Rutgers lecture where he pretends to be Jennifer Aniston? That's probably some of his best content. But I saw recently Sam Hyde, I think only a few months ago, talked about women cops, you should be afraid of them. They accidentally pull out their gun and shoot you or something like that.
He literally said they're reaching for I saw that clip. They're going to reach for their taser and messed it up, and he called it word for word. Yeah. Yeah.
So his stuff is very prophetic in general. I mean, it's MDE is timeless. If you have not seen NDE or $1 Million Extreme, so people know what I mean. It's really key to understanding where our culture comes from. Like the right-wing meme culture really stems from $1 Million Extreme. In sort of like our in a very esoteric way. It's you can tell it's sort of the seed of the type of comedy a lot of us find funny. So I would recommend watching $1 Million Extreme if you consider yourself on the right, dissident, whatever, just because of it's sort of your heritage in a way, your comedic heritage.
See, I'm so boomer that this is beyond my time. This became popular after I would have been watching Adult Swim and stuff. So I am literally too old for this shit, but I should know better. What about you, Prudentialist? Anything that we didn't touch on that you wanted to hit?
In regards to the topic, it's just we're at the point of show trials for police, and I think that today is kind of what spurred me to revisit Spandrel's blog and take a look at his post about the based draft, about essentially getting any sort of like straight white male who works within the system to just quit. I'll have a video out on it this weekend, but yeah, I think that we're in for show trials and shit shows. That's where we're at now.
It'll be interesting. I'm really interested in seeing to what extent people actually do start just quitting and exiting, in the police in this case, but this phenomenon generally. Like, will people have it in them to just peace out? I think the police are particularly vulnerable to this happening because it's a life-threatening job, right? And you're definitely not going to be one to be in a position where, even trying to do your job is going to result in even if you survive during your job, your employers are going to make sure you end up in prison regardless, right?
45K a year is not worth your life.
So it'll be interesting to see what the revealed preference is of police officers, particularly the white Christian male. Was that how Spandrel described it, or was it just white male?
White straight Christian.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what those police officers do.
Yeah, and North Carolina, that would have been the Army sergeant, right? That's what they were talking about with North Carolina, right? Was the Army sergeant who got who was in the shoving match with the guy in his neighborhood, and everybody showed up.
Literally, like a teenage girl, a minor who was being sexually harassed, went to him and he shoved him, and now they've got a mob on his yard. The cops won't do anything, and they've got literally BLM like porch signs dug into his front lawn like a burning cross. Like, we are at the inverse of like 60, 70 years ago.
Yeah, and that's a real, like you were saying, like, how are you going to keep getting people to like go into the army or to the police and die for this stuff? Like, how are you going to be motivated to do that? Like, I can't even imagine. I mean, I don't know all the facts in that case, but from what I even reading sympathetic articles on that, it looks like the guy who he got in an altercation with had the police called him twice, once for harassing an underage girl, like a teenage girl, and then another one where he picked up a baby randomly and started walking away with it. And so this guy is like, sees him in the neighborhood again. It's like, get out of my neighborhood. And that's what gets shown on there. It's like, oh, get out of my neighborhood. You don't belong here. And they blow it up. And this becomes, now a reason to, like you said, go burn BLM signs on his lawn. But that said, Bolero393, once again, thank you very much, sir. Very, very generous. Thank you very much. To my fellow Reds, I am striving to be 10, but with this super chat, I might reach a 6.2. Hopefully, all of you continue to level up too. Thanks for the stream, Auron, Charlemagne, and Prudentialist. And guys, I know Dave. Was it Dave who was talking about everybody becoming a 10?
No, it's AA.
Oh, it was AA. Yeah, it was AA. Sorry, it's I see these videos. I'm like listening to them out of the work, and they kind of run together at this point. But yeah, no, everybody, as we've said before, you becoming worthy is the most important part. Like, if you're not getting married, if you're not having families, if you're not building a career, if you're not building networks, if you're not building yourself spiritually, mentally, physically, then you're not going to win. And that's all there is to it.
Yeah, I just started going to church again because I felt like the spiritual warfare going on was so intense that I needed the counterbalance. So I would recommend doing that to everyone. Everyone doing that as well. Because I definitely find it worthwhile so far.
Yeah, go to church. It's worth it.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just be real up front. I'm somebody who I was always religious, but maybe had waned some at different times. And when my first wife died, like, you need guys to have something like that in your life. Like, hard times are going to come. And you need to be in church. You need to have that, something like that to lean on, because you're not going to live through the easiest times. And if you don't have your spiritual life in order, then the rest is gonna. Everything that you succeed at is going to flow from that. And so I really, really encourage people to get plugged in however you can with that, because it's really important.
To sort of take the that thought and sort of expand on it, like your hard times are gonna happen to everybody. Like I have a video on it called "Don't Be Discouraged." Like guys, I'm literally waiting for a kidney. I do dialysis every night. If I can do all this stuff, if I can network, if I can encourage people to like live a better life, God knows you can do it. Have church, have those networks, have people that you can talk to. Just don't let life eat you away, because the atomization and all these sort of black pill takes that people want, those doomer posts, that's what they want from you.
Absolutely. And Lev here is here to plug the Prudentialist with a donation. Thank you very much, Lev. He says, Break the Rules TV, Prudentialist arguing for democracy like a sucker. Good luck.
Oh, I know. I have the whole thing is, I have to play devil's advocate for the position I'm against. So I have to go watch Dave's modern day debate stream and see what Lankel's arguing for democracy. It's going to be cringe.
So yeah, everybody make sure to check that out. Make sure to subscribe to Break the Rules. Check them out. Make sure to see Prudentialist absolutely destroy people with facts and logic about democracy tomorrow.
And with that being said, I am going to have to take care and leave so I can take a shower and plug in for dialysis tonight.
Oh yeah, man. No, absolutely. Thanks for coming on. And everybody who has not subscribed, make sure you're following Prudentialist on Twitter. Make sure you're subscribing to his channel. I've got both of those things below. Anything else you want to plug before you go, Prudentialist?
I'll be on Break the Rules tomorrow, and then the after party on Friday, and then the Sunday stream on my own channel this Sunday. And I'm really thankful that I got a chance to actually talk to both of you guys.
Absolutely, man. Thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it was good. And sorry for thinking you were British.
It's okay. People confuse me for either you or turnip all the time. So no point taken. All right, guys. I'll see you.
Have a good one, man.
Bye.
Yeah, sometimes I forget how much of our community is British. Like I had so many people being like, "Oh, this stream's too late. I can't catch it," or "Oh, this is like 5 a.m. or something in the UK." I'm like, "Oh, right." Like I forget how much of a percentage of you guys are over there. But let's see. Have deep perspectives. No, another black person just got killed in North Carolina today. Okay, so that's a separate incident. Okay.
Yeah, I looked it up. Yep, some fatal shooting. North Carolina deputy. So here we go again.
Yeah, like I said, there's going to be pretty much endless opportunities for them to push that narrative. So if it's not this one, it'll be the next one. But yeah, I thought it was talking about the other incident though. And then BHW says, get on Telegram. I'll be honest. Thank you again for the donation, guys. Both of you. Sorry, I mean to say thank you every time, but sometimes I jump right in and forget to say thank you. But yeah, I am on Telegram. A couple problems. One, I'm wildly boomer, and so I literally just don't understand half of how Telegram works. Two, like I only have so much time to devote to platforms. And just doubling up on Telegram. Like the thing is, Telegram is valuable to make sure I can still contact people I absolutely need to. So I have people like the Distributist on Telegram to make sure, like, when they leave Twitter, I can still talk to them. But Twitter is what gets people's eyeballs on the channel. Just to be honest, like my tweets are doing much better. I'm regularly getting retweeted by much bigger accounts, and it's bringing a lot more people to the channel and kind of to what we're doing, and it's just a more valuable platform for me to use regularly. I do have a Telegram just as a backup, but you probably won't see me being super active just because splitting the time kind of defeats the purpose. But I don't know. Have you been using Telegram at all, Charlemagne?
I have a channel and a little public chat. I hate Telegram. I mean, it's like Discord with one channel.
Yeah, that's how I feel. That's exactly how I feel.
And it's like, this just sucks. I can't use this. You log in, there's like a jillion new messages. I mean, yeah, I don't like it at all. I prefer anything else. I mean, lots of different people are using Element now. I find Element perfectly suitable. Just use that. If there's a YouTuber you follow and you want them to have an Element server or whatever, just bug them until they make one. As opposed to Discord, and I don't know, this Telegram stuff just sucks. It's like a stepping stone when you get banned. It's not a place to really build. I don't think it's worth investing in.
Yeah, I felt like it was better as like you're saying, like a fallback if you need to have it, but
Yeah.
I don't understand people pushing it that hard. Now, what everybody should be pushing is Odyssey. I like Odyssey a lot. That's why I put Tweety Bird up here. He said, "Get on Odyssey." I have an Odyssey channel. Have you done the Odyssey backup thing for yours?
Yeah, I uploaded all of my core content there, and literally as soon as we finish, I'm going to go upload that Matrix video I've mentioned a few times as an exclusive there, because I really don't feel like dealing with YouTube's censorship algorithms. And honestly, it's kind of freeing to make content where I'm like, yeah, they're not going to take it down because there's 3 seconds of a film clip in this thing, right? So it's kind of freeing to just make content there. So yeah, I'm going to be investing a lot in Odyssey.
Yeah, I think Odyssey's great because it also like does things like immediately transfers over live streams. So like I've been uploading to Rumble too, but Odyssey like automatically just moves everything over there. So it's great because like you don't have to like do everything in triplicate to make sure the content is still backed up in a safe place where people can watch it who don't want to get involved with YouTube.
It's cool too because it kind of functions as a donation platform as well because the LBC tokens have value. Like I've noticed a lot of people just boosting my videos. I don't know exactly what that does, but it's essentially donating the coins to you, right? So people can the LBC tokens are interesting because or is it LBC library, whatever? Because they serve a variety of purposes, right? Like you use them to transact, and you can also use them to boost creators' content and just donate to them. So it's I like that the token has some utility function within the service, and it's not just fiat, basically.
Yeah, no, I like that too. And so anybody who's not subscribed to our Odyssey channels, definitely do that just for no other reason than if YouTube eventually comes for this channel, Odyssey is probably where I'll spend most of my time. So just do that to make sure you can keep track of your favorite creators, but also so that you have other alternatives besides YouTube. Zero Kev. I want to make it clear to everybody how old I am. I guess I sound younger. I am like I'm not an old man, but I am older than everybody else doing this except Dave. And so I am wildly out of touch with what the kids are doing on the internet these days. So just be gentle to Grandpa. I don't understand. Okay, I have the white New Balances. I'm not prepared to handle whatever newfangled comedy you have in that you're kicking around on the internet.
I think we missed Noramac super chat.
Oh, okay, Normac.
What about AR-15s?
If you have it, do you mind reading it? Because I'm not sure if I can.
He just says, so social workers controlled by the federal government with AR-15s. I think in terms of how we were talking about the police being, I think federal social workers with AR-15s is probably not far off how you can expect the police to be in a couple of years.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think that's definitely going to be the case. They've already made it clear that that's essentially what they wanted to convert them to anyway. And even if it's not going to be in an official sense, I think you're going to see far more of that kind of training and far less of anything that's useful. So yeah, I'd expect the force to become exactly that.
Yeah. So in the future, instead of accidentally grabbing her Glock instead of the taser, she's gonna grab her assault rifle. Sorry, guys. That's what's coming.
Yeah, just that way there's 30 rounds ready to go. I went to the range last week with my friends, and it was a lot of fun. But man, I felt every single.
I saw you tweeting about that. I'm supposed to go again soon. 22 is doable at least. It's a lot of fun to go, but it really sucks. I'm really irritated because I can't get any 7.7 millimeter Japanese. It's complete. You just can't find it, or it's like $20 a round or something, and you're just what?
Yeah. See, I specifically put myself into only 9 millimeter and 5.62 or 5.56. So my calibers are all very easy to find, but I'm trying to shoot all my steel case first. I'll be inheriting reloading equipment soon, and so I'll at least hopefully be able to keep up with that.
Nice. Yeah, I think that's going to be the way to go for everyone, really. And yeah, I mean, I have that stuff too, obviously. I actually don't have any 9mm, funnily enough, but I'm more into like historical firearms, and right now, you just can't use them. It really sucks.
Yeah, can you get 54R anymore? Is that prevalent? That's used to be.
I don't have any 54. I mean, I have
okay.
I have like World War One firearms and stuff.
Gotcha.
And a lot of that ammo comes from outside the country, and anything that was on the market was just all bought up, and none of the companies in the country seem to be manufacturing any of it anymore. It really sucks. I'm hoping this isn't forever. You know, if ammo just ends up being more expensive, I don't think it's ever going to go down to the previous prices. But I'm really hoping it's at least available. You know, I would like to shoot my Arasaka, very nice rifle, by the way, the Type 99.
Yep, no, have not fired that one, but Bolero 393 again. Thank you very much, sir. Keep being yourselves. Continue on what you were you were just saying. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Lance Goebel here. What does Moldblood think about grilling? I could not speak for the man directly, but I would assume he's pro grilling. I grilled tonight for the family. So I am certainly pro grilling. I am definitely on the grill pill, and I think any man should have at minimum a level of skill with the grill, particularly steak. You should know how to do steak correctly on the grill, so make sure you're prepared for that. That is directly on our X device. So there you go. Do you have any grilling skill, Charlemagne?
Yeah, I mean, I can grill a variety of things effectively. You'll like it if I do it. Wouldn't call myself an expert. I would like to get a charcoal grill because I have a gas one right now, and I really hate that, honestly. So I'm going to buy a charcoal grill at some point and definitely make use of that.
Yeah, get one of those green eggs. Those things are pretty wild. They're pricey, but they do the job right. All right, guys. So we've ran much longer than I intended to. But thanks everybody for showing up. Thank you for the super chats. Everybody was very generous. I appreciate the support. If you have not subscribed to my channel, please make sure to do so. Also, make sure you've got Charlemagne's and the Prudentialist had to run, but make sure you subscribe to all of his stuff. Oh, we got one more before we go. Okay, hold on. Artemis, $5. Don't worry, Papa Auron will cut you some slack. I appreciate that, guys. Just be kind to your elders, okay? Don't abuse us. We're doing our best to keep pace, okay? But all right, guys, have a great one. Thanks everybody for stopping by. I really appreciate it. It was a great discussion, and as always, we'll talk to you next time.